The first half of what we do today is going to be a review. You should have done it last year on algebra. And then the second part will be new. Let's dive right into what we do in the first part.
Yes. It's already cheaper than
Okay, the thing we are reviewing today is called slope. Hopefully you remember doing slope last year. Okay, slope. If you remember back to last year, we had a letter we used to represent slope. It was a lowercase m. And a lot of times you'll see us abbreviate slope with an m. There for that. And you might remember the words when we talked about slope. Slope is going to be the rise over the run. Take that a step further. Rise tells you how far up or down it goes. Now think of your coordinate plane. Which of your axes goes up and down? Y. So what we're going to do with the rise is we're going to subtract our y coordinates. And then on the bottom we're going to do run. Run tells you how far you move left or right. The x-axis moves left and right. So find the run and then subtract the x coordinates. And this is the part you'll have to be able to do when it comes to finding the slope today. Subtract the y's over the x's. How many people remember seeing that last year in algebra? Okay. So this should be a breeze. Scoot through this fairly quickly. Here's what they're going to do. They're going to tell you to find the slope. They're going to give you 2 points. And just so we're used to it, we'll put some negatives in here. Let's find the slope between the points -2, 3, -5, -5. And if you remember your formula, slope, we're going to subtract the y's over the x's. If you need to, you can mark these, call this x1, y1, this x2, y2. Find the slope. I'm going to use m to represent slope. Subtract the y's over the x's. I'll have you help me out today. Karibo, what are we going to subtract for our y coordinates? What are your 2 y coordinates here? 3 and 5. 3 and not 5. Yeah. -5. Yeah. 3 and -5. So we're going to subtract those 2 on top. 3 minus -5. And if you're wondering why we have 2 negatives there, one negative is because it's a -5. The other one is the subtracting we're doing with y. Then we're going to get the x coordinates next. Kira, what are we going to subtract for our x coordinates?
Our -2 and -5.
-2 and -5. -2 minus -5.
It'd be -5. Maybe flip.
Yeah, you can do this either way. So you can do, you can consider this y1, this y2, or you can flip them. Consider that y2, y1. The order is not going to matter because when you finish it off, you're going to get the exact same answer either way. So technically, you could go y1 minus y2 over x1 minus x2. It's going to be the exact same thing. Now we're going to simplify this. Take care of your double negatives. We get a positive. 3 plus 5 is 8. Down here, we're going to do the same thing. Double negative becomes positive. -2 plus 5 is 3. And then your slope, we're gonna leave as a fraction, so it's gonna be 8/3. You're just gonna leave it like that. Don't change it to a mixed number, just leave it as 8/3. All right, that should be nothing new to you. You should have done that last year. Any questions on how we did slope here? Anybody need to see another one with slope? Okay, now speaking of slope, if they give you a graph of the slope, there's some things that will happen. So let's kind of write these small. Here's your XY coordinate plane. When we have a slope of 8/3, that means you're going to go up 8 and then to the right 3. When you do that, it's going to give you a line that kind of goes up and to the right. So if you see a line that's kind of moving up and to the right, that's going to be a positive slope. If a positive slope goes up and to the right, any guesses as to what a negative slope would be?
Down into the
Down and to the left would be the same thing.
I said down into the
Down and to the right, yes. The graph of a negative slope will look like that, down and to the right. I'm trying to squeeze 2 more in here, so I'm gonna go a little smaller. We have a line that is horizontal.
No, it's right is straight up and down. That's all real now.
Nope, let me show you what's gonna happen here. If you pick any 2 points on that line, what's gonna be the same about those 2 points? Their X coordinate or their Y coordinate? Their Y coordinate. The Y coordinate is up here. Now, if you think about it, you subtract the Y coordinates on top. If I subtract the same thing on the top, I'm gonna get a 0 on top. What's 0 divided by any number? 0. So this one can have slope of 0. And then the opposite of that would be if it's going straight up and down
Undefined.
vertically. Same kind of idea here. If you pick any 2 points on that line, they're going to have the same X coordinate. Where do we subtract the X coordinates?
Under the
Down on the bottom. Is it possible to divide by a 0?
no.
No. We subtract the same thing on the bottom, you're going to get a 0. We don't know how to divide by 0 in math, so that's going to be an undefined slope. So keep those pictures handy. You're going to run into some problems on the homework where they're just going to give you a graph and that's it. They're going to say, what kind of a slope is it? You're going to have to tell them if it's positive, negative, 0, or undefined. Okay, that stuff hopefully was nothing new. Now we're going to get to the stuff that is new. Let's start with parallel lines. I already talked about parallel lines. I'm going to use my 2 pens as my parallel lines. 2 parallel lines are never going to intersect. They're on the same plane. Now, if you think about that, what does that tell me about the distance between those 2 lines?
But it's gonna be the same.
Always going to be the same. No matter where I measure it, that distance is going to be the same in between them. Now, think about the slopes. If these lines are the exact, or have the, I'll give away the answer here. If those 2 lines are parallel to each other, they're always the same distance apart. What do you think that tells us about their slopes?
They're the same.
They're the same slope. So parallel lines are going to have the exact same slope. One of them has a slope of 2/3, the other one has to have a slope of 2/3. One of them has a slope of -6/8, the other one has a slope of -6/8. Same slope is going to make them parallel. The opposite of that would be perpendicular. All right, now we need to remember our definitions here. Perpendicular, what kind of angles do perpendicular lines make?
90 degrees.
90 degrees. So we're gonna get something like this. Now, parallel lines have the exact same slope. What do you think the lines of, what do you think the slopes of lines that are perpendicular to each other is?
Reciprocal or opposite?
Reciprocal is one way of saying it. What was the other? Opposite. You can say it either way. I'm gonna start with that opposite part. They're gonna have opposite slopes. I'm gonna show you an example of what we mean by opposite slopes. Opposite slopes would be like if one of them was 2/3. The other one's going to be the exact opposite. Since this one's positive, the other one's going to be negative. And the opposite of 2/3, if you flip that over, you get 3/2. Let's do another one. Let's say we have a slope of say we have a slope of -5/4. What's the opposite of -5/4?
4/5.
4/5. So they're going to have the exact opposite slope. That means they're going to be reciprocals of each other. And one of them is going to be negative, one of them is going to be positive. Now, Zane said another way of doing this is talking about reciprocals. If you look, they're reciprocals of each other. If I multiplied these two together, 2/3 is -3/2, what would I get?
1.
Close. 2/3 times -3/2.
You get 1. No. You get 6/.
-1, yes.
Uh,
It's 6 over -6, which is -1. If I multiply -5/4 times 4/5, what would I get?
-1.
-1. So another way of looking at this is if I multiply them together, my answer would be -1. So you could say the product of their slopes, -1. You can remember this whichever way you prefer. Product means you're multiplying. Multiply their slopes together, you'll get a -1. All right, now this is the key part to this whole section right here. So if I was you, I'd highlight that one, because as you're doing the homework tonight, that's probably what you're going to want to go back and look at. Parallel lines are going to have the exact same slope. Perpendicular lines are going to have opposite slopes, or if you multiply their slopes together, you would get a -1. All right, now let's go ahead and do this. Here's how they're going to show this to you on the homework, the tests, the quizzes. They're going to ask us to determine if the lines are parallel, perpendicular, or not.
Is that all we have to do for a home?
Well, it's not as easy as it looks, because you're going to get 4 points here. They're going to tell us that point A. Let's see. Something that works out nicely. Let's do point A is going to be at 1, 1. Point B is going to be at -1, -5. Point C is going to be at 3, 2. Point D is at 6, 1. And when you do this problem, if you wanted to, you could plot these on the coordinate plane and kind of draw the lines out, kind of get an idea of what they look like. But you don't have to do that. We can go right to an easier way of doing this. We want to figure out if the lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. Let's start with that parallel part. If they're parallel, what do you know about their slopes? They're going to be the exact same. If they're perpendicular, what's going to happen with the slopes? Or if you multiply them together, you would get what? -1. If neither of those two things happen, then we're going to say it's neither. So that's what we have to do. We have to find the slopes of the two lines, see if they're the same, if they're opposites, or if neither of those things happen. Now, our two lines are AB and CD. So let's start with the slope of line AB. Find the slope, we're gonna subtract the y's over the x's. We know that part already from last year. Now, here's a little logic question for you. You have 4 points up here, A, B, C, and D. Which of those 2 points have to be on line AB?
A and B.
A and B, because that's the 2 letters we use to name that line. So those 2 points have to be on AB. So we're going to use these 2 to find the slope of AB. When we do that, we're going to subtract the y's over the x's like we just got done doing. Allie, what are the y coordinates going to be this time? A and B, what's your y coordinates going to be? 1 and -5. So go 1 minus -5. Or you could go -5 minus 1. Either way is fine. On the bottom, we're going to do the x coordinates. Let's see, Gavin, what are we going to have for x coordinates here? Oh, yeah, that's not all right. Peyton, what are the x coordinates going to be?
1 minus -1.
1 minus -1. Or you could go the other direction, -1 minus 1. Either way is fine. Now we got double negatives on both of these, so we'll add them up. 1 plus 5 is 6. 1 plus 1 is 2. Let's go ahead and put that in the lowest terms. 6 and 2 can both be divided by 2. That'll give us 3 over 1. Or you can just write that's 3. Okay, we got to figure out if the lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. I got a slope of 3 over 1. Am I finished? Nope, we're only halfway there. We got line AB. We also have to do the slope of line CD. And now, just like before, of these 4 points, A, B, C, and D, which of those 2 points have to be on line CD? C and D, because that's the 2 letters we use to name that line. So these 2 points, we're going to use to find the slope of CD. Now, at this point, you probably know what you're doing. We're going to subtract the y's over the x's. I'm going to go 2 minus 1 on top, or you could go 1 minus 2. X coordinates on the bottom are going to be 3 minus 6, or 6 minus 3, whichever way you decide to do it. Simplify that. 2 minus 1 is 1. 3 minus 6 is -3. That's in lowest terms. There is your 2 slopes. 3 over 1 and -1/3. Okay, we said if they're the exact same slope, they're parallel. Are those 2 the exact same slope? No. If they're opposites, they're perpendicular. Are those 2 opposites? Yes. If you multiply those together, you would get a -1. So because of that, these are perpendicular. Perpendicular is our answer for that. If neither of those 2 things happen, you just write neither for your answer. So really simple, you're just going to write parallel, perpendicular, or neither for your answer on this. All right. Any questions with that one there? Anybody think they need to see another one of those to get it figured out? That's all I got for you. Short day of notes. Are you disappointed?